Dixo presenta Coffee with Captain, with guests, hosted by Cap and Steve.
Right on. Yeah. I mean, like, to me, Cap, my takeaway is relatively simple. And again, apologies to people whose questions we didn't get to, but my takeaway is that it is, I think sometimes in Web3, we don't treat it like the real world, and the barrier to entry for businesses, the barrier to entry for builders, and the barrier to entry. And by the way, this isn't talking about a lot of the people today. Like, I look at Von Front and I see what he's building. I look at Peter, I know what he's building. I've had Peter's products. They're good. I've had Von Fronten's products. They're good, right? But I think for a lot of people, there was some other things going on there. And to me, this is saying it's going to be focused. It's going to be going towards the right builders. There's going to be a higher barrier to entry. It's not you're just getting a larger check because you have an ape as your PFP, but you're getting a fair check to build against the ecosystem. And I guess, like, to me, that's like it's part of the evolution and the growth if they want to survive and not just be a entity that funds things that ultimately don't net out in a positive impact for the DAO or the company.
Yes, fair. Peter, I'm not sure if you're able to still get back in here, and I would love to get Simple Farmer and Profits if you guys have any questions or comments. I apologize we couldn't get through everyone there. He just ran a few minutes late for his meeting and had to bounce. I like where it's going. I'm a fan of this AIP. I'm a fan of ApeCo. At the same time, if I'm being candid, I have similar concerns to Peter and Board Dev and Von Frunten. I love the NBA. I love that element of the club. And I agree with Peter. There is some freaking killers in this club. From Peter to Von Frunten to Board Dev to, I think of NFT Hoarder, I think of Asif and all those that do. They are some of the glue that holds this club together. I would be really sad if things transpire where they feel they have to go find another home because they're no longer able to get funding or support or see a path to securing that here. All that being said, I think so because of that, there's a little bit of a leap of faith, right? Are they going to continue to support these individuals? I think it's likely. I think the biggest benefit that I take away from that conversation, Steve, is that it's not just going to be a check. It's not just going to be funding. Rather, I think they're going to look to work closer with these organizations. And yet maybe for something like Board Brewing, maybe it's a little, maybe lengthier is the product. Maybe it's quicker access to funding, but it's the type of deals that come out are instead of just like, oh yeah, here's 50 grand, go do what you want with it. Or here's 250 grand, go do what you want with it. It's here's 25 grand, but we're going to connect you with this other partner of ours and help promote this collaboration. That sort of stuff I could see like them. And I think that was always like in the back of our minds, that was always like part of the perk of building under the NBA umbrella is that if we hit, we've got this giant, not just the community, but this giant entity of Yuga and everything they're building with Other Side and Bored Ape that could really add fuel to that fire. I mean, we saw it with the bodegas at Ape Fest. I just, that's my read is that it's not just going to be funding. They're going to take not saying they're going to have an equity stake in everything they fund, but it sounds like a more collaborative approach as opposed to just blank checks.
Well, I guess this is I have this thing that I say sometimes where, when there is organizational change, anybody who's worked in a large Fortune 500 or multinational company, there's organizational change constantly. They're constantly reevaluating and people sometimes say, oh, like the only thing that's consistent is the change around here. And they have these things that they say, and it's kind of fun to say. But the truth is, any organization worth its salt is reevaluating its structure at any given time. I used to tell employees, this isn't always the case, but most of the time, if you are doing what you're supposed to do and you're good at your job, organizational change will be a positive for you. Now, in the short term, maybe you'll go to a manager you don't like as much, or things will shift around, you'll have some growing pains, but it presents new opportunities. I think, to use our own selves as an analogy, we are funded right now, sponsored by, Ape Chain. We weren't the ones that needed to worry. It was the wrapped BMWs that needed to worry, right? It's like, that's the sort of place that we're in now. I think very similarly, the real businesses aren't necessarily the ones that need to worry. Now, granted, it maybe sounds like, I know this was a comment in the war room, that maybe they're less interested in funding 0 to 1 and they're more interested in funding 1 to 10, or people who have done it before. I get that. But if you have a business...
Is that a bad thing, though? Is that a bad thing? I get for those of us that might be thinking 0 to 1, like I would love funding. But if we zoom out and think about the long-term success and sustainability of the DAO, if we remove ourselves from the situation, is it a bad thing to move on from 0 to 1 and make sure that there's a greater chance of success? I don't like, and it probably like I don't know how I feel on it, but I think it's valid to take that approach.
Well, if you look at like ApeCo, again, just using us as an example, do you want to fund a space that has done, a space, a podcast, video repurposing with two people with, and DGen, but on the behind the sport with hundreds of thousands of followers, with a consistent audience of 1,500, 1,500 plus across all platforms on a daily basis, 500,000, listens a year, that is going to reach an engaged community, that is connected within Web3, that's got business experience and best-selling authors? Are you going to want to fund that? Or do you want someone to come up and be like, hey, I'm starting a space and I think you should fund it. I promise it's going to be big. Again, I know that's a very oversimplified analogy and it's different, but like as a business, you can understand why they would say, look, unless we are starting a property where, and it's also different. If one of us starts a new property, like that might be something they're interested in funding because they're like, okay, you've scaled this before and we know what it's going to be and we want to get it on the ground floor. But I understand the difference there. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad. I'm not saying whether it's positive or negative to those people, but I understand the business reasoning. And yeah, again, like I think the people who are truly building and making things work. Now, again, the danger of that becomes that if somebody is a 0 to 1 builder that builds a really good business and then it flourishes, are they coming back to 8chain? They might not. But so that's where they need to pick their spots and have that vision. But, I think there's a world where those 0 to 1 businesses just don't get a $500,000 check. They get a $25,000 check and they say, we're taking a business like an angel investor here and we're going to take a shot. So
we got Von Frutton on a hard shot clock. He's got to get out here. Go ahead and get back in. And then I saw Peter unmute. We'll go back to Peter. And then if Profits and Clutch want to get in here, we will go around the horn. Von Frutton, go ahead.
Yeah, appreciate it. And I think Steve was starting to get where my head was, right? I think look, if I'm Garga, if I'm Cam, if I'm the people who are the ones writing the checks, I get it, right? They spent 4 years writing 0 to 1 checks. And there's not a ton to show for it. And there's definitely a lot of bad things to show for it. So like I totally get why they're doing what they're doing. It makes sense as where they are wanting to place their capital to further the interests of Yuga, the Ape Foundation, ApeChain, ApeCoin, everything. It makes total sense. I think there is the downside, potential downside, and Steve was starting to get on this, is the club has a lot of 0 to 1 builders, right? I'm one of them. Full bias. I'm one of the 0 to 1 builders. And I think you run the risk of, if one of the reasons that a lot of people are in this ecosystem is because we saw it as potentially an opportunity to leverage those Web3 network effects and take our business from 0 to 1 in a better way than we could outside of Web3 and outside the Bored Ape Yacht Club, and that opportunity is gone, do you start to alienate a portion of the club and maybe lose that portion of the club? And maybe that's okay. And maybe that is some of the growing pains you got to go through. As long as we're all going into it kind of like eyes wide open and we're not going to start, sell shaming people because, we can go get regular VC or regular angel investment money or whatever and don't have to build on ApeChain anymore to go grow our businesses, right? Not saying that's what we're going to do, but I think if there's a 0% chance that happens, right? So I think it's a risk that, or maybe not a risk, it's a reality that may come from all of this. It may be a very necessary reality, but I do think that there are going to be builders in the space that, unless there are those levels to this of, are you a 0 to 1, a 110, a 10 to 100, and there's, different allocations of capital that goes to each of those. I do think that that's going to happen. And, as a 0 to 1 builder, personally, a little sad if that's what happens. Totally understand it. But hopefully that there can be structure to this that allows for builders of all shapes and sizes to continue to participate in the club and in the ecosystem. Because personally, that's been one of the most attractive and most fun parts about being an ape for me for the past 4 years, is this community of builders that we've kind of curated over that time.
And I think there's Von Frutton's using it to use a different analogy. When my son comes pissed off and says we didn't get to go to recess, and he says, why? I was like, well, there was like 4 kids in the class who were causing a kerfuffle. And we didn't get to go out to recess because they punished the whole class. It feels like Von Frunten saying like, look, I'm a 0 to 1 builder. I'd love that initial angel check. I would love to be able to kind of continue to do that. I have a focus. I have a business background. I'm a professional. And, because so many stupid things were funded in the past by sort of this, almost nepotism of sorts, or not even nepotism, this controlled funding, he's the one who's on the outside looking in. So I get that analogy. Like, I understand that, that sort of frustration. Again, for my money, I also understand to the point of like, there's going to be trade-offs. Like, it's going to be a trade-off if, ApeCo jumps on with Von Frunten and says, I see what you're building, can't fund it, not the right fit for us. And he might say, great, well, Polygon's going to, or Abstract's going to, or whoever, insert chain is going to. And then what's going to happen if he grows and is successful? Well, he's going to stay, dance with the girl he took to the dance. And so totally understand that. So I think it's a tough spot, but it's also I think from a business perspective, again, it's easy for me to say as somebody who's not only funded and gone through all 3 processes, which, we've been through, an attempted banana bill process, a DAO process, and sort of a process that is probably a good guinea pig for what this looks like and given feedback on all 3 of them. You have to look at, again, from their perspective, which I think Von Frunten's doing a good balanced job of doing, which is this money is just going to disappear if they're just funding passion projects that don't have accountability around them. And I think that that's the direction we've gone for a lot of these things. Now, it's not everything, but I think that's the lens which they're looking at it with. And, I can understand.
I also understand that this isn't for everyone. And I want to at least represent the other side. I see Big Bull jumped up. I just sent an invite to Crypto Sheep, who I saw apparently wasn't happy with the news today listed their mutant after, I think, last month buying it to build an NBA company. I'll share I think Clutch Simple Pharma was up next, and then Profits, and then Big Bull. So let me share this post from Aaron. I'll give you my thoughts on it, and then we'll go Simple Farmer with Clutch next. Aaron says, here's what I support. I support whatever the DAO ends up voting for. I support CryptoGarga and the team bringing Ape and ApeChain to new heights with ApeCo. I support those of us in the trenches building on ApeChain. I support my friend, Board and Council co-founder Ernest, continuing to call attention to the rules of the DAO. Here's what I wish had happened. Those running the DAO gave members the opportunities to have their AIPs voted on. Remember your AIP, Chris? Yeah, I do very much remember it. And that's why I am supportive of this change is I think it was broken. I don't think the DAO was working. I think it's been broken for a long time. Is there a chance that new people and a new special counsel could fix the DAO? Yes, that is a potential outcome. And it's not the people. It's not that I don't think Ernest could fix the DAO if he got on the special counsel. I think the structure is fundamentally broken of where we are in this place and time and what this DAO is supposed to be. It just wasn't working. To your point, we proposed a DAO we proposed an AIP that didn't even get to vote. And not only was it an admin review for 6 months, it was 7 weeks would go by before we get a response. Now, you could say that was the individuals. It was the problem of the special counsel at the time for stonewalling us. I'm near the reason it didn't get approved because they were working on Banana Bill, which would have they viewed as maybe a competing AIP or something at the time. So I guess my take in following the DAO, not as closely as Aaron and Ernest and others have for the last 4 years, but I've been involved. I've submitted AIPs. We've had AIPs approved. We've had AIPs that never saw the light of day. I just think the DAO, and now the counter to this is probably, well, this new structure got proposed. We haven't seen how that play out in the wild yet. Maybe I think the DAO was broken. I think that it was not working. And, definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I think change was necessary. This may not be the perfect change, but I think that this is better than what had transpired. That said, I fully understand the pushback from those like, well, we just got this new on-chain voting mechanism approved. We just eliminated the admin review. Let's see that play out first. I fully respect and appreciate, hey, can we try to CTO it first? Cool. I don't have any objections with any of those attempts, but what I feel pretty confident, it wasn't working as it was intended. And it was ripe for for extraction. There was certain groups that were taking a lot of millions of dollars out of the DAO, no accountability. We never saw anything come from it. And so I feel change is important, and I do think this is better than what it was. But that's my 2 cents. I am a Clutch Simple Farmer. If you want to get in here, let's go. Simple Farmer, Profits, Big Bull, and then Aaron.
GM Captain, GM Steve. I really enjoyed your guys' conversation with Garga. I thought it was insightful to learn about his long-term plan, right? And my favorite part about what he said is that the plan that's being implemented now is looking at not a 1 to 2 cycle, but a 10 to 20 year future. And I think that the way that he's setting it up to run ApeCo and improve ApeChain from a business perspective is absolutely massive. To give some background info, we actually worked with the foundation very recently to get Clutch Market launched on ApeChain. And the foundation is actually staking Ape in the Clutch platform in order to earn revenue to cover all of the costs and actually come out net profitable with what they've deposited into a Clutch Market. So I think that model is really smart. It's a total no-brainer, actually, from a business perspective. I'm a huge holder of ApeCoin. I have a mutant, and I'm going to be shopping for a Bored Ape now shortly after this space, after hearing what Garga said. And I absolutely love it. We came onto the chain maybe 3 weeks ago, and we're already top 5 for total volume created as a DeFi protocol on ApeChain. What that tells me is that there hasn't been much good DeFi being built on ApeChain up until now. If we're already in the top 5, that's really crazy, being only 3 weeks in. So I'm super excited. And what I was actually going to ask Garga is if they're willing to lean more into super clever proprietary DeFi products that generate revenue on chain for people who hold ApeCoin as well as ApeCo who might invest in said products. And obviously, I think that his statement about the long-term future of ApeCo and ApeChain, it actually answers that question. So it's probably an obvious yes. So yeah, man, I just want to say from the other side, I also have a Bored Ape. I'm a mutant. I'll be getting a Bored Ape. I'm going to be using the MBA if possible. I would love to put Made by Apes on Clutch Market. I think that'd be super cool. So I think there's probably some form of future for that. So I don't think people should worry about that in a negative way. I love the direction this is going. I'm super excited for the future. I feel like I hit the jackpot coming onto ApeChain at this time when this transition is coming. A transition away from inefficiency towards efficiency, revenue, and supporting the price of ApeCoin. I mean, that's just awesome. So I just wanted to say that. And thank you guys for letting me up here to speak. I thought you guys did a really great job interviewing Garga.
Thank you very much.
Cool.
And grateful you're building on ApeChain. Grateful to have connected. And I will also be grateful when I finally hit a parlay, Steve. I kid you not, we hit 1 of 2 again last night. The Reds lost by 1 run once again. So we've missed out like the last 3 parlays on 1 of 2 losing by 1 run. So if anyone has a hot guaranteed lock for MLB tonight, let me know in the chat because I would love to pay out one of these parlays tomorrow for Cap's Clutch Market parlay of the day. But in all seriousness, like what you're building and what you just described, gets me really excited about ApeChain. Gets me really excited about the ecosystem, the community. Like yes, and yes. I think this is a great example of checking all those boxes where it's beneficial for you, it's beneficial for the chain, the ecosystem. It's also fun. People in the community are engaging and participating without having to be, bribed to do so with a TG or anything. So yeah, appreciate all you're doing. And we need more simple farmers out there building similar stuff on ApeChain.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I'll let you get back to Hans because I didn't have the order in there. But I think the point is that we're trying to make, which I think I just want to keep getting across is, Cap and I uniquely have been through 3 processes. We have tried to do the banana boat process. We have done the AIP process multiple times. One of them completely held up and didn't go anywhere. One of them, it took a while to get through. And then we did what is probably a variation of the new process. And I can't emphasize enough. Look, we probably, could have gotten more for the sponsorship and whatever. It's but at the end of the day, we went through 3 processes and one of them resulted in, quick answers, quick calls. And if we ended up walking away from the deal or they walked away from the deal, I feel like it would have happened relatively efficiently versus being strung along. And so to me, that's the power of what's happening here. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's going to be right for everyone, but the fact that we've heard and still have no clear reasoning why one of our AIPs, which was set to actually make the DAO money, was continuously held up in review because there was a competing proposal, or there were people on the council who didn't feel good about it, or they weren't meeting enough, and all of the things that we heard behind the scenes without really clear answers. And instead, we're sitting there, hands up in the air, waiting for an answer. Like, that's not an ideal process. Nobody wins there. The banana bill was, a similar thing where I think people felt like it struggled a little bit. This process was extremely quick. It was like phone call, next week phone call, deal signed within, I think, a month of discussion through negotiations, through, things that we wouldn't budge on, things that they wouldn't budge on. And that's how negotiation probably should happen for that sort of funding. So that's like, I guess that's my point, is like, I think people are sort of, the process that Clutch Markets explained. It's like, it's a far better process, and it's a far better process to get a no than it is to wait around hoping to get a yes. So I think that to me felt better. But again, it's a growing process, and they're going to constantly be evolving to try to grow the ecosystem. But I'll let you kick through hands, because I know you had the order there.
We've got Aaron, Profits, then Big Bull. Aaron, GM, appreciate your patience.
You assume that I have patience, and I appreciate that about you. I wasn't going to even come up. I just wanted to put my thoughts down there. But yeah, I mean, look, you've been through that process, as I mentioned, and yes, you had same thing with me. I had one AIP that went through. I'm very grateful to the DAO and everybody who helped with that. I mean, Animoca. I mean, sometimes we paint as villains, but they very much helped me, pass that. And then I've been through the process where it didn't pass, but at least it got up to vote. I really just wish that other people in the DAO, the Mutant Spears, the Lore Lords, everybody else, just got that same opportunity to get up to vote. I mean, clearly the DAO was broken. I feel like it was broken kind of from the beginning with the way that voting was established and all that. Um, I'm ready to dump all this down knowledge from my brain, and I don't know, learn Italian, do something else with it. I'm looking forward to seeing what ApeCode does. I don't. I mean, there's a vote, but spoiler alert, is going to pass. And I also appreciate my friend and partner Ernest, who is there saying, "Hey, actually, this is the way things should be done. Maybe we can give everybody the same opportunity to get things passed." And obviously, Garga's Garga, right? And I get it. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. But you've been part of that process, Cap, where um, some of the same people whom we both really like and respect uh, didn't allow things to move forward um, against what was supposed to happen. And so we're all kind of now saying, okay, well, that didn't work, so let's lean into it even more and just just go in that direction. And to be honest, I'm cool with it. Like,
I know.
I hold ApeCoin. I want ApeCoin to go up. I work in the trenches on ApeChain. I want a lot of people there. I mean, Ernest and I launched the second largest grossing collection on ApeChain so far, and we are continuing to work on the background of just expanding the market. Whether there's a DAO, whether there's not a DAO, it doesn't really matter. Workers are going to work, and so I respect whatever the DAO does, and yeah, even if it's to off itself, it's totally fine.
Fair. I think I feel different than, like, I think this is an actual change versus more of the same, in terms of, yes, is there risk that no one ever gets funded now? Absolutely, that's a risk. Like they could just say no to everything. I think it's much more likely that community builders, those that are concerned about this, I think it's much more likely that two things happen. Either A, you get funded, or B, you get a professional answer in a much more timely manner than what was happening previously. The biggest complaint, frustration, that some of this is anecdotal, but from my conversations with those deep in the club and that have submitted AIPs or submitted to the banana bill, is months. Like, the number one complaint is, oh, I submitted something 6 months ago and I still don't have an answer. That's unacceptable. And I don't think that'll be an issue going forward if this were to go through. I think you're going to get a pretty quick yes or no, or to Steve's point, you're going to get back and forth and get some real questions and be treated like you would if you were proposing something to a real business entity that wasn't just had to go, like. I think we'll see. I think it'll be far more efficient, and maybe no one ever gets funded in the community anymore, and this is just to fund Yuga. That is a potential risk. I'm taking Garga at face value that that's not their objective here, and that they do want to support and stand up some of these businesses, whether it's a MBA business or not. I don't think it's more of the same. I think it actually is a.
Well, Kat, that's not exactly what I meant, and I'm sorry. I trust Garga. I trust in Garga. I'm good with that. You know me. I minted, never left, never sold. I'm BAYC through and through, and I think that it's going to be great that people get a faster process, even if it's a no. I think that's fantastic. What I mean is the transparency, and look, like I'm not a Web3 maxi. Like I'm not a decentralization maxi. That's not the reason why I'm here. I'm more of an IP builder, want to help entrepreneurs build up their stuff, and I like the tech, I like the abilities that people can have here. But we're talking about not having transparency, and it's kind of been said the last couple of weeks that there should not be transparency. And listen, I'm okay with that. I agree. Not everything should be transparent. You put something on the blockchain, you'll be able to see that, but not every decision behind it has to be explained to everybody. That's what I mean by leaning into it, is just going from we're supposed to have some transparency and reports, et cetera, to none is expected, none will be given. And that's okay. And I also think that's fine with me. That's what I'm saying.
It's fair. And didn't mean to put any words in your mouth that weren't accurate. Profits, you've been super patient. Appreciate your patience. I don't see a hand up, but it could be my end. I want to kick it to you, though, if you'd like to get in here. GM, always a pleasure. Oh, we lost Profits. I think. If you still want to get in here, throw a request. We'll get you back up on stage. Big Bull, GM, appreciate your patience.
GM, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you.
Perfect. So a few things. I put a couple of posts up. One is what Garga mentioned on the last spaces last week. A report by A16Z. I think it's definitely worth reading. Everyone who wants to make an informed decision about DAOs should read it. My view, I put up another post up saying, why vote no? I'm not actually against pretty much everything he's proposing. The only thing is, he's said he wants to think very long term. So if you're thinking long term, why rush it 7 days or 14 days? You can still have, and as Aaron said, this is very likely to pass anyway. While they're doing that, going through the steps, because I think it's disrespectful to every AIP author that's been in the system and the entire concept of the DAO to effectively have Class A and Class B ApeCoin. And so one ApeCoin does not equal one ApeCoin. If you have preferential ape voting, ape to go up first, right? That said, one of the things I did say was that for DAO to work, you need the biggest holders to be the evangelists. So if the biggest holders, which is Yuga and Yamoka and the founders, are not interested in doing a DAO, or really have ever been truly interested in doing a DAO, then long term, I don't see how DAO can work, right? And so I think that's a kind of important point, right? But one thing that no one's mentioned, of course, is by taking it out of a foundation into a ApeCo, it does mean that Yuga and the founders can sell much more easily, right? So they can sell their ape without having the risk of losing the control of the assets in the foundation, because it will be in a company, right? So you could see that as a positive or a negative. I just think it's something.
I'm not tracking.
Well,
your founders could sell their own personal ape in their allocation. I'm not tracking,
because right now, if you're on the committee, you need 10 million ape coin. So the committee picks the executive director, right? The committee effectively is the final stop after on what was written on the AIP 852. So right now it's Animoca, it's Yuga, and optionally, the founders of Yuga, because they would have more than 10 million ApeCoin each. So if someone came in, if those guys sold down their ape and became less than 10 million each, they would no longer be in the committee. And then if other parties bought ape to that level, they would be. So it's not, if a group of 5 or 6 corporations or funds put in 10 million each, they could effectively take control of the DAO, right? So, I mean, obviously that'd be very expensive based on the market depth. But my point is you may see this as a positive or a negative. But if it's in a ApeCo, then there is no control loss or risk if they want to sell down their ApeCoin. You understand?
Yeah, no, fair. I'm tracking with you now. Yeah. So basically,
okay. I'm not saying it's good or bad. There's good and bads to that, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's that big of a deal. I hear you. I guess I haven't been overly concerned with the amount of ApeCoin that the founders are holding. I've actually assumed that those monthly allocations or those monthly distributions are getting sold. I have no idea. I've never looked into it. I just I've assumed they've been selling their monthly unlocks for a while now.
I think they said before they weren't, or some of them weren't. Anyway, but it's reasonable they want to sell, right, along the line to fund what they're doing for the business and fund Yuga, right? So it's not unreasonable. But coming to Aaron's point about transparency, actually reducing transparency, there is a benefit, right? So when you want to engage with large firms, right, and not just people within the ecosystem, they would rather engage, with an NDA and the foundation and discuss what they want to launch and then work on it and then launch the product, right? And then launch it to like their million clients that they already have, right? So it is tricky to do those kind of things in a snapshot for a model, right? But I do think that 0 to 1 time is kind of over, unless there is kind of hinted they might give a little bit of funding to ThankApe for that, or what kind of Old City and I were doing like before when there was the small grants. There could be a small amount for that, but that stuff isn't going to move the needle fully, right? But it will. It does create the ecosystem, but I don't think it can be a large amount. Anyway, one other thing they didn't mention, of course, is also treasury, right? So, are we going to manage? Are they planning to keep the treasury in Ape? I mean, it's actually sensible to have part of the treasury in stables and other stuff, right? Stables, ETH and BTC and what have you. But I'm just, this is something which the foundation, I think, didn't do a great job of, in terms of other DAOs or foundations kind of thought about that a bit more. But I do think, though, the biggest thing that kind of gets on my nerves is when people say, nothing was done, it's taking too long, because the last 6 months they've been in charge. And so if it's taking too long, there's been no stewards. There's only been 3 people on the special council, and one of them worked for Animoca, who's on the committee. Another one is working for the foundation, and effectively we've been told it's going to go into, go into this new ApeCo. So if there was any delays in AIP 582, or if the DAO hasn't done anything for 6 months, that's because they chose not to.
Fair. I don't know timeline wise, so I'll hesitate on saying. I know there was changes 6 months ago, and then I think I noticed the probably the biggest change I've experienced from my perspective has been since the new leadership structure went in place with Juan and Cam over there. I don't know, Steve, was that a couple months ago?
Officially, it was, I think we had a Cam on the show to announce it 2 months ago. So I think it was about a couple months ago. But at least when they were more empowered, I noticed a personally, I noticed a significant difference. There's obviously crossover in some people, and I'll leave it to the DAO to make the decision, or the foundation to make decisions on who it is. I know they brought on some other people. I mean, again, I'm just going to speak from my own experience, but it was, again, AIP was long. We had one AIP that didn't even get through. We were given all these various reasons from people who heard things from people, like through a game of telephone.
Are you talking about AIP 396, LFG Ventures, or another one? Which one are you talking about? Which AIP are you talking about that didn't go through?
396 is the one that we proposed. Yeah,
it was right. Yeah.
But there's obvious reasons that didn't go through, because you don't have a venture capital background, and you don't have the legal structures. You didn't do a GPLP structure. I mean, there's loads of reasons why that couldn't pass legal. But
no, there's not, because we did have individuals that had that experience on the team, were advisors, and never even went to vote. And we never even got that feedback from legal. That was the issue. There was
what you just said now, that was the first time we've ever heard that. Yeah, actually.
We didn't get any feedback like that whatsoever. And it was I believe the reason it didn't go to vote is because at the same time they were planning on the banana bill, and they didn't want ours to go to vote before theirs. But it was
right. I had no exposure to that, by the way, so I have no visibility to that decision making. But I agree with you. It was a challenge, but
the foundation did fail on managing the treasury. That was part of the proposal. Was why are we paying Coinbase $100,000 plus a month to custody funds when we're in DeFi? It was a bleeding expense to the tune of millions of dollars to custody funds when there are many people in the ecosystem that have tremendous track records in DeFi. Even if you just put it in stables and earn the most conservative yield possible in this space, it's better than a 6-figure monthly expense. There's so many things like that
which, by the way,
mismanaged. And
which, by the way, like you said, people we partnered with on that. And so I guess, to me, again, respectfully, to be well, it's obvious why that didn't go through. It's well, we didn't hear back, so it's not obvious. We didn't get any feedback. It sat around. We wait months to get answers. We got run around on it. And if that was the feedback, and that was the feedback initially, what we could have done is gotten that feedback within, I don't know, even a month of
a week. Yeah, and get a partner in who has that experience and that structure.
Big Bull, let me finish. Let me finish. We could have gotten that feedback within a month of putting in the proposal, and then we could have adjusted the proposal or even the team to do accordingly. We've been told there were other reasons, like Banana Bill coming up and other things, or people who just didn't like the direction it was going. So I think that's the point, is on one hand, we went through that where we were not given the feedback. Like you say, it's obvious. We didn't get that feedback. So certainly not obvious to us. We did have people on the team who had experience both in DeFi and otherwise. And that was part of the point, is that the DAO wouldn't lose money on a mismanaged treasury. One of the points we talked about earlier today. So we've been through that process there where we didn't get the feedback and it was completely opaque. So it wasn't a transparent forward process. We had been through the Banana Bill process, which we didn't get a lot of answers on. So that didn't work. We did go through a DAO that passed at 98% for our show, which is great. We appreciated that. My point being, I think saying this process is, to me, this process is far superior that we happen to have gone through in the past 6 months. So that's, I guess, the point that I'm making, is that if there is, a more optimal usage, there should be. But I want to see it. I just want to see it succeed. I just want to see the DAO succeed. And the process that we had before was not succeeding, and the feedback was across the board with multiple people in that way. And again, I think going 6 to 8 months without a response is not an acceptable process for something like that. And a hard no and a quick no is a little bit better. But I think that those sorts of processes, I think that's where it's to say, to try to I think the adjustment is needed and important.
We got Ian back up. Ian, appreciate your patience this morning.
Thank you guys for having me up on stage. Yeah, I mean, I've been in the DAO for a while, and I had multiple generating and revenue generating dApps that were going to bring revenue back to the DAO. But for the longest time, I was always told we cannot accept any kind of revenue back into the DAO, so I completely gave up. I had at least 3 to 4 different ideas that were multi-million-dollar ideas that could bring revenue into the DAO. But right now, we're looking at the DAO and we're like, why isn't there any revenue here? The SEC stopped us for so long, and now I kind of feel like it's a corporate takeover. So as long as the corporate takeover takes us to the moon, I'm completely happy about that. But Garga just got on here and said that he's going to be doing the same kind of funding. And to be honest, I'm not looking forward to community funding. I know a lot of apes in here like that. I'm looking for a CEO who knows what he's doing. Maybe there are certain dApps that need additional funding. Okay, that can be talked about. But I think we need to consolidate ours and go for something that's a lot greater than just a grants DAO. And I felt like the last talk Garga just said, ApeCo is kind of going to be a grants DAO, but instead of a grants DAO for everyone that everyone can now vote on, only now 6 people can now choose. I don't like that. But I definitely appreciate Garga taking the reins again, and I think we need to head more towards less grants and more towards more sustainability.
Yeah, and I don't think it was ever actually truly, I mean, on paper, everyone could vote on it. But in reality, 98% of the community could support you, and it wouldn't matter if Animoca and Machi, Big Brother, didn't support your AIP. So it turned into a political process in that way. And I think that was part of the problem. It also didn't matter if you didn't get through. Like I said, putting in an AIP and the point that was made earlier that we've talked about and brought up at Garga, it's like when people put in AIPs and they don't hear back anything really of value for 6 months, they don't go up to vote. Like I look at Von Frunten, who was on stage earlier. It's like he went through the process. He got the feedback. People talked about it. Like not being able to put things up to vote because of that. That's the problem I think we run into with this, where it was just so unbelievably inefficient. And I think the point you're making, Ian, it's like, as long as it's the right 6 people, I'd rather have 6 people who know what they're doing. Like people got offended when Cam made the comment of like, hey, if you say you have this connection with a very important person, I might ask to see the contact in your phone. And then furthermore, I might ask how they're actually going to bring value to ApeChain, not how you just know them. That's what we should be doing. That's what a real business does. It doesn't just say like, oh, well, trust me, bro. That trust me, bro capital doesn't work. And so I don't know. I think that'll be directionally what makes me most interested. I think there's going to be growing pains with this, like there is with everything else, but I do think it's a logical next evolution.
I also
Cap,
understand.
I do need to jump in a minute here, though. So
yeah.
I think we can go through hands, but I got a few things I got to get to. As we continue to go throughout the day. So I think we could, I'll let you respond, obviously, but like probably hit some hands and then close down here pretty soon.
I'm not seeing any other hands on my end, but could be a next thing. I also just want to acknowledge, like, for those that have been pushing for and working towards like the utopian vision of a decentralized autonomous organization and all that it could do. And like, yeah, I too wanted to see the same thing happen. I think it's very difficult, very challenging. And I don't know I just don't know if it makes sense. I understand like, oh, this is going from a decentralized organization to a centralized organization. That's not what I'm here for. I hear you. There is a world where Garga and the ApeCo team, they go the other direction and it ends up not supporting builders in the community. This isn't just the ApeCoin DAO. My feelings and views on DAOs in this state is just, it's hard and it's not efficient. And I want to see ApeChain win. The L2 landscape is extremely competitive. I want to see Bored Ape Yacht Club win. I know these are all different things, but I think it's a better chance of success if you have a centralized entity that can move fast in this competitive landscape, as opposed to a DAO, which for all intents and purposes is an experiment with a bunch of different people attempting to move as fast as other well-funded, fast-moving startups. It's just, I think there's too much at risk for the current state and time. Maybe fast forward 5 years and ApeCo decides to fund a DAO again and decentralize the operations. I just think right now there's a greater chance of success in this competitive environment with leaders that can be held accountable, as opposed to attempting to figure out the best way to run a DAO that's supporting a club and supporting a chain. It's tough. And I don't know if we have a good comparable. I don't know if we have a good comp that's actually done this well. So that's my thoughts. Big Bull, I saw your hand go up. Go ahead and get back in here real quick, and then we'll let Steve get on his way.
Yeah, and the point that was made by Ian, I mean, before you couldn't do investments, or you had to do indirect investments because there's a thing called economic substance, right? So when you're in a Cayman structure, you have to have the management needs to be within Cayman. So that's why when they said they can't do investments, it wasn't they couldn't. So if, for example, Steve had, Steve and Captain, investment fund LLC, we could give to them and then they could give to you, right? So it's all about not having day-to-day management. So these were some of the challenges, and there were also a lot of costs on these structures, which makes sense if you're a multi-billion-dollar vehicle or company. But when you become smaller, those overheads relative to the size become, much higher percentage, right? So, I mean, these are kind of nitty-gritties of where the DAOs are, but I do agree with you, Captain, that it's step by step, like if in the future, maybe there will be a small piece that can be used that can try out this, but you're not betting the whole house on it.
Yep, agreed. The other takeaway, I'm reading between the lines, I think ThankApe days may be numbered in terms of supporting the ecosystem, and that also makes me sad, as I've been a huge fan of that organization. It's really the people. Like they mentioned, Dilly is now on this team. But ThankApe's been great. I think what they've done for the community, the ecosystem, has been very commendable. And I hope there is a future for them. But my reading between the lines, it sounds like that program might be winding down.
Yeah, and by the way, the point I was going to make earlier, I was actually going to make this point earlier. The other thing that I would say is, at least on our experience with the new team, we also have a member of the team, not one of the leadership members, but a member of the team helping manage and partner with us on things, which is a huge difference, where they're reaching out and being like, hey, here's a guest like Libart we had yesterday. They made that as a suggestion. We got him on the show. They are working with us on feedback on things like jingles and live reads to make sure it's done. It's just done with a more professional manner, the same way that any company would manage a vendor, a client, or a service provider. And to me, that is bullish on the future direction of where this thing goes. So that said, Cap, I know it's 7:37 where I am, 10:37 where you are. Let's let everyone sail off on their day. I am going to be on a plane in about 12 hours. Go ahead.
We're hitting a Caps Clutch Market play of the day today. So if anyone has their favorite MLB bet, let me know. We're going to get one. Today's the day. I feel it in my bones. So tomorrow, someone's going to be walking away. A listener who supports is going to be walking away with that parlay cashed out. I feel it.
Yeah. Let's get lucky today. Appreciate the Clutch Market, folks. And yeah, I mean, let's let everyone sail up on their day. Like I said, in roughly 12, 13 hours, I'm going to be on a plane here. And then hopefully getting some sleep. I don't sleep well on planes. So if I'm low energy tomorrow, give me a little bit of grace, because I'm going to be basically flying in, getting in the morning, driving home, getting ready for the show. Hopefully a shower in before the show, and then we will be back to normal, hopefully by Thursday. But that said, let's let everyone sail off on their day. Appreciate everyone who came through today. We will talk to everybody bright and early tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, and it will be 8 a.m. Eastern Time for me instead of 5 a.m. Eastern Time. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Ape Chain on Chain. This project is powered by the ApeCoin DAO through AIP 572. Bringing our community's valuable conversations on chain and also on traditional audio platforms. Rate this episode and/or leave feedback and earn Dixo rewards by visiting the Dixo on-chain platform.